Hey everyone, so you clicked on this video because you want to learn the sine rule and cosine rule. These two rules are usually very confusing and somewhat difficult to a lot of people. But in this video, I'm going to use some fun and interesting examples to help you learn these two concepts. Make sure you watch the entire video because at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a few exercises for you to try on your own. Make sure you click the description box below to see the answers to those exercises. My name is Peter. Grab your calculator and let's get started. So the objective is to find the missing side or the missing angle of any triangle. All of the triangles in this video are not going to be right triangles. The two rules that we'll use are sine rule and cosine rule. The sine rule, it looks like this down here. Sine of A is divided by the side that is opposite angle A is equal to sine of angle B divided by the side B that is across from the angle B. So if you have this ratios like this, that's the sine rule. The cosine rule, it's a little bit longer. You have A squared, the side A squared is equal to the side B squared plus C squared minus 2 times side B times C times the cosine of side A. So these are the two rules and I'm going to explain how to use both rules. So to use the two rules, we need to be able to identify which rule do we use for which type of triangle. So if you have a triangle where you have a side and an angle, if those two sides are in the order of side angle, then use the sine rule. For example, this first triangle. In the second triangle, we have an angle, another given angle, and a side. So if you see that the measurements are given in the order angle, angle, side, then use the sine rule. Now the order doesn't really matter of these letters. So for example, you could have side, angle, angle, and you'd still use the sine rule. Or you could have angle, side, and you still use the sine rule. Let's take a look at the cosine rule. So if your triangle has only 3 sides, then you'd use the cosine rule. So side, cosine rule. If your triangle only has a side and then an angle and then a side, then use the cosine rule. A simpler way to distinguish the two rules is to look for an angle across a side. So for example, this triangle up here, we see that 60 degrees is opposite a side. So that means sine rule, immediately sine rule. If you look at this triangle down here on the left side, there is no angle that's given that's across from a side. So this is going to be cosine rule. Or even this triangle to the right here, 70 degrees is not opposite any given side. It's not. So this would be cosine rule. In the first triangle here, 100 degrees is opposite 5.1. So that means sine rule. So that's a really important pro tip. So the first example here we're going to look at is a triangle that looks like this green triangle. And if you look at the order of the measurements, we have angle, angle, side. So if you have angle, angle, side, we're going to use the sine rule. To set up the question, all we need to do is to write a ratio of sine of an angle divided by the opposite side of that angle is equal to sine of the second angle divided by the side that is opposite that angle. So in this case, I'm going to write sine of 115 degrees divided by x. So I'm choosing x because x is across from 115. This is going to be equal to sine of 22 degrees divided by 25. 25 and 22 degrees are opposite each other. So all I need to do now is to solve for x. So I'm going to cross multiply 25. So 25 times sine of 115 degrees divided by sine of 22 degrees is equal to x. So all I did was I cross multiplied 25 to the left side, x to the right side, and sine of 22 I divided on both sides. So using your calculator, once you do all those calculations, you'll get 60.48 millimeters equals to x. In the second yellow triangle, I'm given side, angle. So if you see that you have SSA, it's the sine rule. So to set it up, I'm going to write sine of theta divided by 5, because 5 is across from the missing angle, equal to sine of 75 divided by 8. So the next step is I need to isolate sine of the missing angle. So I'm going to multiply 5 on both sides. So sine of theta equals to 5 times sine of 75 divided by 8. And now, since I'm looking for an angle, I need to find the inverse function of sine, and that is going to be sine inverse divided by the product of 5 times sine of 75 divided by 8. If you use your calculator, all those computations, the calculations are going to give you 37.13 degrees, and that is the missing angle. So in the next two questions, we're going to be looking at two triangles and how we can apply the cosine rule. So we know we're going to use the cosine rule because if you see a triangle that only has three sides, side, 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 then cosine rule. Alternatively, in the second example here, if you see that the order of measurements is side, angle, side, then we're going to use cosine rule. So these two abbreviations here are really important when you want to decide whether to use sine or cosine rule. Now, having said that, before you start punching in numbers, substituting numbers, you have to understand how to use the cosine rule. So the letter A here is going to be the side that is across from the angle that we're looking for. So in this first triangle up here, 7 is going to be A because we're looking for P. So wherever A is, I'm going to put a 7, and here cosine of capital A, I'm going to put the letter P. And then B and C are going to be 5 and 8. It doesn't matter which one is B, which one is C, the computation is going to be the same. So let's go ahead and write this. So 7 squared equals to 5 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times 5 times 8 times cosine of P. So this is the part where it really doesn't matter which one is B and which one is C. This calculation here in the middle is going to be the same. So when you simplify, 7 squared is 49, and when you add 5 squared and 8 squared, you get 89 minus 80 cosine of P. And then the next step is we need to subtract 89 from both sides, and you get negative 40 equals to negative 80 cosine of P. After dividing both sides by negative 80, because we want cosine to be by itself, we have to divide both sides by negative 80 to get 0.5. It is positive because negative divided by negative gives you positive, equals to cosine of P. So we need to figure out what is the inverse function of cosine. It is cosine inverse of 0.5 equals to P. So using your calculator, that's going to give us 60 degrees is the missing angle. So now let's see how we're going to use the cosine rule to find the missing side here. I know we're looking for the missing side because in this arrangement here, cosine rule is the only sensible rule to use. So we're looking for this side, QR. So since we're looking for side QR, I'm going to label that side P, and it's going to be P squared is equal to B squared. I can choose either 13 or 14 to be B and C. So 13 squared plus 4 squared minus 2 times 13 times 4 times cosine of 70 degrees. And then when you add the two squares there, you're going to get 185 minus 104 cosine of 70 degrees. And then here we're going to use our calculator to simplify this entire computation. So P squared is equal to 149.43. So the inverse function of squared is square root. So when you take the square root of 149.43, your answer is going to be 12.22 centimeters. And that's the length of QR. Here's a pro tip. The sine rule and cosine rule are generally used for triangles that are not right triangles. So if you have a scalene triangle or any other triangle that's not right triangle, then this would be the appropriate rule to use for those triangles. So after watching 4 exercises, here are 2 exercises that you need to try on your own. Before try the two exercises, you need to ask yourself two questions. Is a given side opposite a given angle? If the answer is yes, use the sine rule. If the answer is no, use the cosine rule. Number two, how do you apply the rule? If you forgot how to apply the two rules, please watch the video again and then try the two exercises. The answers for both exercises are in the description box below. Good luck!